If you ask someone from outside the UK to imitate a working-class British accent, they will almost certainly attempt a Cockney one, likely inspired by mid-century actors like Michael Caine. Yet in 2010, leading sociolinguists issued a grim diagnosis. They predicted the Cockney accent would completely vanish from the streets of London within 30 years. A 500-year-old dialect, spoken by millions and recognized globally, does not usually disappear overnight. This diagnosis points to the erasure of a foundational cultural identity. If it's truly disappearing, we need to find exactly where the dialect is hiding. The word Cockney originally appeared in the 14th century as a derogatory term for a cock's egg, a misshapen or runt egg. Over time, rural Englishmen repurposed it as a quiet insult for pampered, effeminate town dwellers. By the 17th century, the definition tightened into a strict acoustic rule. To be a true Cockney, you had to be born within earshot of the bells of St Mary le Bow Church. This map shows the historical reach of those bells. Because London's prevailing winds blow from the west-southwest for roughly 3/4 of the year, the sound carried asymmetrically, mapping the exact geographic borders of the traditional East End. But today, heavy urban traffic and modern noise pollution have overpowered the bells. The audible area has shrunk inward, barely reaching past the commercial blocks immediately surrounding the church. Within that tiny modern radius, there are virtually no residential maternity wards left. The strict acoustic geography that defined the identity for centuries has engineered its literal extinction. It is now physically impossible to be born a Cockney. To track where the speakers went, we first have to isolate the specific linguistic traits of their speech. The most prominent phonetic quirk is the fronting, where th sounds are pushed to the front of the mouth and replaced by an F or V. The word maths becomes maths. There is also T-glottalization. The speaker drops the T sound entirely from the middle of words, replacing it with a brief pause in the throat called a glottal stop, so water becomes war. Then there is the vocabulary. Cockney miming slang developed in the markets of the East End, likely as a method for vendors to obscure their conversations from the police or from eavesdropping customers. Rhyming slang operates by swapping a target word for a multi-word phrase. To refer to the stairs, a speaker instead uses apples and pears. In the advanced version of the slang, the rhyming portion is dropped entirely. You walk up the apples. These traits made the dialect difficult for outsiders to penetrate, serving to tighten the bonds of the local community. By the mid-20th century, the tight-knit community living in these crowded terrace houses was about to face massive physical displacement. During World War II, the Blitz decimated the East End. German bombs wiped out entire neighborhoods, leaving rows of brick houses in ruins. In the decades following the war, municipal slum clearance programs finished what the bombs started. Thousands of families were forced out of London and into new social housing developments. This demographic map tracks the resulting Cockney diaspora. The flow lines show the population moving away from the city centre, expanding outward into Essex and the surrounding home counties. The speakers were evicted from the geography that originally defined them, but they took their linguistic traits with them into the suburbs. Back in the modern East End, the vacuum left by that diaspora was filled by new waves of international immigration, creating a multi-ethnic hub. In these traditional neighborhoods, young people now speak a new dominant dialect called Multicultural London English, or MLE. This flowchart illustrates how MLE is actually a hybrid. It uses those core Cockney features, like the glottal stop, as a base layer, and merges them with Afro-Caribbean and South Asian linguistic inputs. Meanwhile, out in the suburban diaspora, a second major hybrid offspring emerged, Estuary English. As migrating Cockneys moved outward and mingled with surrounding populations, they smoothed out the roughest edges of their accent. The resulting Estuary English bridges the gap between working-class speech and posh received pronunciation. The features of the East End survived by moving into these new forms. Its phonetic quirks live on in Estuary English, and its underlying structure supports MLE, allowing the dialect to persist far beyond the reach of the bells.